Yo, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to Second Take. I'm Vishwa Salem, and today I'm joined by Saif as we discuss the future of the LA Clippers, especially after recently they have hired Tyronn Lue to be the replacement for Doc Rivers as their next head coach. Now, before we give our insight on whether hiring Tyronn Lue was a good decision or not, we just want to say that Doc Rivers, in our opinion, was a much better coach than Tyronn Lue for many reasons. Go check out our previous video for a full depth and analysis. We covered the video of the Philadelphia 76ers and their future and how it's going to be with Doc Rivers. So go check that out. I promise you won't regret it. But anyway, we feel like Doc Rivers was a much better coach just because of his experience, his overall energy, and how he impacts his players as well. To begin with, as we address how Tyronn Lue is going to fare as the head coach of the LA Clippers, he is actually not a bad coach, not as good as Doc Rivers, and in my opinion, I don't think the Clippers made a wise choice firing Doc Rivers, as once again, it was in our earlier video. But Tyronn Lue is probably the best choice available in the market after firing Doc Rivers. Tyronn Lue has a great relationship with a lot of superstar players. You know, he led the Cavs to a championship title. You know, many people think that LeBron's the one that carried the Cavs to the ring. Tyronn Lue didn't do anything, but in my opinion, this can be true, but Tyronn Lue at least deserves some credit for that championship run that he had back in Cleveland. In addition to that, when you look at the Clippers roster, you see Kawhi PG, Marcus Morris, Lou Williams, Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell, way more. They're probably pretty worn down from facing the hate of the world pretty much after blowing a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets. You know, the whole world wanted to see an LA battle in the Western Conference Finals between the Clippers and the Lakers. That would have been a legendary matchup, but unfortunately, the Clippers had other plans, and as you guys know, the memes have been falling on them. They're pretty mentally worn down. So it's up to Tyronn Lue to turn this around so that the Clippers can get back to where they were supposed to be. And as many expected, that the Clippers were expected to win the title coming into the bubble. Let's jump into the reasons that the Clippers were a flat out terrible team in the playoffs of this year's bubble. And first of all, they shouldn't have even advanced to the second round, in my opinion, as if the Mavs had Kristaps Porzingis, I definitely feel like they would be a much better team, and they would easily be able to take down the Clippers with their ball movement, the talent of Doncic and Porzingis combined, and the Clippers, I don't see any way they would be stopping that. And this is ultimately, Porzingis' injury ultimately led to the Clippers winning in 6 games. Even then, you could see how poor the Clippers were playing. They had no chemistry whatsoever. The pandemic P memes started to fly, and Paul George was pretty much getting memed all over the place. When you jump into the second round of the playoffs, however, they did start to look more like the team that many saw they were supposed to be against the Denver Nuggets. You know, their stars were playing much better. Kawhi was doing pretty good, and they were getting a lot of bench help until, of course, they blew the 3-1 lead, which nobody saw coming. And once again, everyone was expecting an LA to LA battle, and this was just a flat out terrible series for the Clippers. As you guys can see right here, there's literally no chemistry whatsoever in the Clippers' offensive end. It's pretty much Kawhi Leonard, the Robot Man, and Paul George, Pandemic P, pretty much running the offense, ISOing, taking terrible forced shots. And even then, it's not even like they're doing anything that bad besides the forced shots, because if you guys can watch these clips, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are just flat out missing all the shots that they're normally expected to make as superstar players in today's league. In addition to this, on the defensive end of the floor, the Clippers are also really terrible. The Nuggets have really efficient ball movement. Big props to them. They delivered excellent in this year's bubble, and nobody expected them to beat the Clippers. but their ball movement was so efficient. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. and Jeremy Grant, all of these guys were delivering really well on both ends of the floor. There's Gary Harris and Monte Morris, some role players as well. But unfortunately, the Clippers are not able to keep any pace with them. As for example, when Nikola Jokic is in the post, he normally has a mismatch. Montrezl Harrell, as great as an energy and great defender he is as well, he's not able to do anything against Jokic. He's supposed to be a great sixth man. He was a sixth man of the year, but the stats show that Ivica Zubac was in fact a much better player on the floor than Montrezl Harrell. So whenever Jokic would get doubled, he would end up kicking up to an open shooter, or that shooter would pass up another shot, and this is how they would keep sharing the ball till they get an excellent shot. The Clippers were simply not able to keep any sort of pace with this sort of great offense. And these points show that they had no chemistry. Their offense was terrible. Doc Rivers, maybe some of it's on him, but it was also the players not even making their shots. Lou Williams, supposed to be one of the greatest bench players of all time, he wasn't delivering as well. They were missing all their open shots. Defensive end was terrible, and it just didn't seem like they wanted the ring at all this year's bubble. Well, everyone thought the Clippers were going to be some sort of super team coming into this year, but as we all know, they were a disappointment. But let's look to the future for how good the Clippers can be going forward. And to be honest, the Clippers haven't really been that good of a team since they had Bob McAdoo when they were the Buffalo Braves way back then, and when they had the Lob City lineup of Chris Paul, JJ Redick, Matt Barnes, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. That was a really fun lineup, especially with Austin Rivers and Jamal Crawford there as well. Austin Rivers and Doc Rivers were there, father and son. And these were the Lob City Clippers that many people love to watch. But the Clippers this year were not as fun to watch, especially in the playoffs. But hopefully this could change due to many reasons. Now, all jokes aside, we all know how talented of a roster the LA Clippers really were with their all-around team, with their excessive amount of depth that they had as well. All jokes aside, once again, and the Clippers were also the favorites to win this year's NBA title by many, and this was not due to no reason. They had such a talented roster all around. They had Kawhi Leonard and Paul George as their superstars. Marcus Morris and Lou Williams are excellent secondary scorers to have as well. They had the defense with Patrick Beverley, Marcus Morris, and their wings as well. And they had the energy off the bench. Montrezl Harrell, the sixth man of the year. Landry Shamet, excellent shooting, as well as JaMychal Green. Ivica Zubac, also a solid starting center as well, being 7 foot, being able to hold his ground. So they had so much depth and a really talented roster as well. Unfortunately for the LA Clippers, though, they are probably going to have to rely on purely getting really good chemistry and having a really great relationship with the coach Tyronn Lue. And this is mainly because, as you guys can see, the Clippers do not have a first-round pick of their own for the next 7 years till 2027. This is mainly because they traded Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and a whole bunch of draft picks, first-rounders, to the OKC Thunder in the part of the PG trade, which has been really bad for the Clippers looking forward. I mean, the Clippers were hoping for short-term success, maybe getting a ring at the cost of, canceling their future pretty much with all these draft picks, but it's pretty much backfired now. Look at the OKC Thunder. The Clippers just gave up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, in my opinion, is going to be a really talented player. He could be one of the league's best players going forward. They gave up a really great stretch forward in Danilo Gallinari, a really versatile player, and all these first-round picks that have a lot of young talent in them. So the Clippers kind of screwed themselves up there. So once again, they're going to have to rely purely on their chemistry and their talent once again. And another bad news for them, Montrezl Harrell is also going to become a free agent. Many teams are going to be looking for him. He's one of the top free agents in this year's class. He was a sixth man of the year. He's going to be looking for some big money. If the Clippers aren't going to be able to pay him, they're going to lose a lot of bench depth. So it's not looking really good right now. But once again, we don't know how Tyronn Lue is going to do. If he can reshape this team, you know, turn them back into the contender many people saw they were meant to be, then this could actually turn out to be a minor success maybe in the future. So the Clippers, possessing one of the best records in the Western Conference last year, are looking to make some big changes so that they can have a successful season in the future. And now we'll head on to our co-host Saif Khan. Saif, what are your thoughts on the Clippers' disappointing performance in this year's playoffs, as well as the changes they can make going forward, especially with Tyronn Lue now coaching the team?
Thanks, Vishwa. I'm definitely not against the hiring of Tyronn Lue, but he is one of the better options available right now. I think the Clippers won't do it exactly better than they did with Doc Rivers, but I do not see them regressing from this hiring. To begin with, the Clippers, yes, like you said, had a pretty disappointing playoffs, but even more than that, I think they could have got eliminated in the first round to the Mavericks if Kristaps Porzingis was playing the full series. But getting back to the point of Tyronn Lue, he is definitely a good sign for the Clippers, even though I feel like him and Doc Rivers are very similar in different ways. But Lue has worked with LeBron and has helped the Cavaliers win the finals back in 2016 when he was their head coach. They want to become better with Tyronn Lue than they were with Doc Rivers. They definitely have to make this around Kawhi and not just Kawhi and PG, as we know that Kawhi is definitely their number one player, and then get him help with PG, Lou Williams definitely, Patrick Beverly, and Harrell, and so on and so forth. But that's definitely their main thing, or else I don't see them getting any better than they were with Doc Rivers as being their head coach. Also, I'd like to add the fact that this new era with Tyronn Lue might start off rough, as they might lose Montrezl Harrell, who was a big part of their offense and defense last year. I also think that since they don't have any first-round picks, because they pretty much, in my opinion, they lost the trade with the Thunder when they acquired PG, this might start off rough, but if they fix their chemistry and go out and get a good point guard, then I definitely think they can be better than they were previous years with Doc Rivers. Obviously, this is going to be a start off slow, I feel like, because of them losing possibly a couple of players and they don't have any first round picks. But once they get their chemistry together, this team is definitely a big contender.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Saf. There you guys have it. Their second take and our prediction of how the Clippers are going to do going forward and what needs to change. In my opinion, the Clippers have a really talented roster, but due to some critical moves they made, as well as some disappointed performances when it really mattered, it's not going to happen in the near future unless Ty Lue does something really big, establishes some sort of chemistry. And even speaking of chemistry, there's been a lot of reports that players like Patrick Beverly, Lou Williams, and Montrezl Harrell were reportedly really unhappy with Kawhi Leonard and how he was being treated, the privileges he had with load management, as well as other things like being late to flights, and the coach is allowing it. In my opinion, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but once again, it does add to the fact that their team chemistry is just going down the drain right now. Let us know what you guys think about the Clippers and their future going forward. Please subscribe, like this video, share it, and until next time, thanks for watching and peace.